Okay, well, thank you to everyone who shared. You guys had really nice comments. And it's a good thing you guys are acknowledging the beauty of the environment because if we don't take care of it, there's not going to be beauty to enjoy. So good thing that we're going to talk about this. We can go to the next slide. So we are first going to start off with what is ethnic studies, just to get familiar with this word. So ethnic studies is the interdisciplinary study of ethnicity as understood through the perspectives of underrepresented and disenfranchised, communities in the United States. Ethnic studies analyzes the ways in which race and racism have been and continue to be powerful social, cultural, and political forces and their connections to other axes of stratification, including gender, class, sexuality, and I can't see the last word. Okay, but the next part is the curricula exists in large because students of color have demanded an education that is relevant, meaningful, and affirming of their identities. So next, why is ethnic studies important? We said that it's important that because everyone is impacted by race and racism, ethnic studies gives students the opportunity to analyze how race and racism impacts them and the communities they live in. It also gives students the tools to think critically about how they can learn from history and shape the communities that they live in so that our growing and diverse population can continue to thrive. So now climate change. This was a learning experience for us because our focus is ethnic studies. So we hope that our definitions are like right there. So we are experiencing the impacts of climate change, and clean energy is a solution to this. Minnesotans are already feeling the impacts of like a changing climate. Our winters are warming 13 times faster than our summers, and extreme weather is becoming more frequent. Health problems like asthma and allergies for Minnesotans and diseases spread by ticks and mosquitoes are on the rise, all because of warming temperatures. So in 2018, there are some things on our Earth that like happen due to climate change. Such as there was 10 natural disasters that impacted 49 it's supposed to be countries, and it costs over $40 million in fixes, and that's enough to pay for 650 additional teachers in Minneapolis schools. And if we take no action, Minnesota's on track to lose our boreal forests by 2070. So this includes the most common trees found in northern Minnesota, like birches, pines, and spruces. And we can act like there are some things that we can do now, such as to protect our state by passing the 100% clean energy bill, which Ale will elaborate on.
Yeah, thanks, Joanna. So the 100% clean energy bill is a comprehensive plan for reducing greenhouse gas emissions, which I'm sure all of y'all have heard about by now, in a way that reduces racial, ethnic, um, gender, economic, and geographic disparities statewide, beginning with the most impacted communities. Those in particular for this state, this area that we live in, are mainly people of color and renters. Um, those are the most impacted, and those who live next to factories. Those are the most impacted. Um, but further on the plan, this plan includes accelerating our progress on building efficiency renewables like wind and solar, electrification of our vehicles and heat sources, uh, looking and reviewing our land usage and adapting for future damage, and supporting communities that, again, are impacted by the transition to make sure they are included. And this is just like a bill overview. Like if you want to look into like the nitty gritty details of how that would look over the next like 50 years, you can go to the next slide. And this is the specifics of what our options are and what our demands are in general. Either way, we need a pathway to 100% clean energy. It doesn't matter it does matter the way, like how we do that. But it needs to be a comprehensive plan for um, reducing all of the disparities, while ensuring that our Earth isn't going to crumble by 2015. Oh my God, sorry, 2035. We can go to the next slide.
So now we'll talk about like how environmental justice, now that we've talked about ethnic studies and a bit as to what climate change is and how it affects us, specifically here in Minnesota. So environmental justice, according to the United States Environmental Protection Agency, environmental justice is the fair treatment and meaningful involvement of all people, regardless of race, color, national origin, or income, with respect to the development, implementation, and enforcement of environmental laws, regulations, and policies. And because I myself, when I did this research, you can go to the next slide, I was like, what? Because it's a lot of like big words. So I did my own little breakdown. So basically, according to study.com, environment is the surroundings or condition in which a person lives. It's not just outside and things that we pointed out earlier. It's like your home, your place of work, your schools, and like the community parks. So now environmental justice works on making all of these things for everyone supposedly a healthy place to live in. And it is a healthy place to live in regardless of where someone lives or where one is from or how we look. And Donna will talk more about this, but I think it's important to acknowledge that although supposing there's this big organization working on this, there's pretty words painted saying that like we're gonna fight to make sure that regardless of where you live, you have clean energy and that you won't deal with the effects of climate change and stuff. But in reality, at least me personally, I went to school in Minneapolis and I went to Edison High School. And to go from like Northeast Minneapolis to like North Minneapolis, we had to cross this bridge. And when you cross this bridge, there's all these factories by like around that bridge. So when you're on the bus, going home or to school, usually going home, you can smell like the carbon being burnt. And obviously we do jokes like, oh, who farted? But in reality, if you think about it, like why are we going through that? But if you think about, you know, richer areas or even Northeast Minneapolis, these factories, like this bridge literally separated Northeast Minneapolis and North Minneapolis. And we had to cross that like to get to school, and we had to face like smelling that, which I mean in the long run could have effects to us. But then in the other nicer areas they didn't have that. So it's like, they're preaching that they're gonna like make this like safe for everyone, but it's like, are you really? But Donna will talk more about how like it affects us and specifically people of color.
Hi, yeah, so thank you, Johanna, for that. I was actually going to start with the history of downtown and the separation of North Minneapolis and downtown Minneapolis. So in the slide, I have factories. So in downtown, we can see how north side is separated by the highway. So that was because when Minneapolis or downtown was created, it was well known that like African American and just Black folk were in North Side, and as well as like other people of color were there. So then that's where the factories were, and then as we started to develop more, we created that highway as a landmark for like white people to know, like, this is where we separate like downtown and North Minneapolis, and like this is where we have the factories, thus affecting like Black folk and like people of color that live there. So it wasn't until recently that in 2013 that the the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency started recording or monitoring air pollution, and that's at Laurie Avenue, and that's located in, I believe, in downtown. And then October 2014, the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, I believe is what I just said, Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, started monitoring other air toxins in the air, and as you can see, like it violated just the standard of how much pollution there can be in the air, and that just goes to show that, you know, this study was done in 2014, therefore it's recent. But as you can imagine, like this has been done for generations, for centuries. Thus, like we can see now the effects that we have, such as asthma and other effects that we have, like learning disabilities. In Chicago and other states, we can see that too. I went on a school trip where it was specifically traveling all pretty much Midwest, showing the factories and air pollutions and just the effects that it has on like the people of color that live there. But as I've said multiple times already, it's mostly just targeted with Black folk that live there. So an example was, there is this factory that I think is Ford, but I don't remember exactly, has a factory that is known for its light, for like the light that is shining, because even in the nighttime, some people that live there like confuse it with like the sun, just of how bright it is, and just like the immunes that come out of it is like so strong. And when I went, they said that there is a ongoing lawsuit to get that to shut down. But as we know, corporations and stuff like that are all connected. So we'll see how that goes, just because, you know, money and capitalism, and we all know that jazz. So yeah, sorry, going back to Minneapolis. We have seen an increase of asthma as well, particularly on the north side, just because of where the factories are located and just like the air pollution that there is. And sadly, this particular agency had just started in 2013, and we're in 2021 already. So it's not that big of a huge starter, but we're getting there, and hopefully, you know, we're able to one day shut down those factories. So yeah.
So how they connect. So now, once again, just like recap, we've learned what ethnic studies is, climate change, environmental justice. We learned how like the effects of climate change specifically affect people of color. So now, how those ethnic studies in climate change and / environmental justice, how do they connect, right? So implementing climate change awareness is being done through ethnic studies pedagogy. So there are environmental charter schools in California which are already implementing ethnic studies in awareness to climate change in their schools. So some of the quotes from like teachers and students among this was so ethnic studies pedagogy is rigorous, culturally responsive, and reflective to challenge racism and the legacy of colonialism. And teachers have the chance to understand how our students conceive of themselves racially, economically, and historically. So basically, with ethnic studies pedagogy, students get the chance to be producers of the knowledge they are learning. So it's not necessarily the teacher tells you what to learn or is throwing these things at you. It's teacher and student learning, and the teacher is taking in what the student wants, and they're connecting it to, as mentioned, how this affects you economically, socially, and environmentally. and obviously historically, because that's, I mean, the main point of ethnic studies, to learn the actual history of where we live. So as mentioned, it's not just the teacher bringing in like topics for the students. It's bringing an experience to the table, and it's a joint experience where everyone is learning and everyone is realizing how this affects our lives, like today and now. So we can go to the next slide. So some results of having this ethnic studies pedagogy is in ninth graders, students are no longer thinking about living in tiny homes, but rather they're asked to imagine how to reuse vacant lots in an area that experiences the heat island effect and hotter climates due to climate change. And with 10th graders, students think about what Los Angeles needs to be sustainable, accessible, and an equitable city of the future, because these effects are coming faster than we realize. And like us, like when I'm older, like it's gonna really affect us. So again, with this curriculum, students are digging deep and they want to analyze how their surroundings affect them, and they let their true emotions out and are encouraged by teachers to make a difference, and I mean to just overall take action, which is something that I think is it is very important to have teacher and student working hand in hand for a better tomorrow. And we can go to the next slide.
Okay, so we would like um, to invite you to all envision with us what could ethnic studies look like at your school. This could also be like an incorporation of an Asian American history class or a Chicano study class. We would like to hear your thoughts on that. And you are free to turn on your mic or use the chat to answer the question.
We actually have a question in the chat right now. So the question was, if I, my chat will work. Is anyone here in an ethnic studies class, or does your school offer an ethnic studies class? Um, for me personally, I didn't learn about ethnic studies until I joined a group outside of school, because my school just didn't offer it at all. So I had to like have my own resources to find it. And then it wasn't until now that I'm in college, like now paying for the class, that I'm really going into depths about it. I took it last semester. That was just my experience with it. But I also do know that a lot of schools in part of the Minneapolis district don't have that. Or some of them, I think, I can't remember which one it was. I think Roosevelt had it because the students fought for it, but as soon as those students had graduated, the class was taken away. I think that was Washburn. Washburn. Thank you.
I had ethnic studies class. I had Chicano studies. And as Jessica said, I was one of the students that had fought for that, as well as the Black Visions class that talked about like Black authors specifically, stuff like that. And as soon as we graduated, I'm pretty sure they cut it off. So, yeah.
And I graduated in 2014, so just to put that in perspective. But I went to Eastridge High School. Yeah, Eastridge High School, which is definitely in the suburbs. It was very white-centered history, and I do know that the classes, they didn't offer ethnic studies, definitely, but there were some Egan High School students who had fought for it um, even after they graduated or something like that. So my girlfriend actually took the ethnic studies class that they had there, and it was taught by a racist white woman. So her experience with that was definitely not the best, which is why we asked, like, we need to envision what this is going to look like in the school, because it cannot be taught by white people. Even in college, where I think it was like sophomore year of college, where I actually learned about ethnic studies, um, So what, 4 years ago or so. And I've had to play catch up since then because all I learned about was 1492 Columbus sailed the ocean blue. Like, that's not sufficient history. That is not sufficient history. Jessica, did you want to read the comment? Or
My chat
I
box
can do it.
won't pop out, so yeah, can you take over?
I can
Yeah,
read.
yeah, sure. Oh, Donna, you got it.
Sorry, Ali. So Betty said, my school offers an elective class called the Latino American Story. I wasn't able to take it due to scheduling issues. And then I am so sorry. Jayla, please correct me if I'm wrong,
It's yearly.
said, my school also offers ethnic study classes as electives. I wanted to add, I forgot to mention that Washburn tried to, so the both classes that I mentioned, Chicano Studies and Black Visions, and I think just African American Studies, they try to integrate, or is that the word? They try to combine all those classes into one. And we were like, yo, you can't do that. Like you don't know how to teach any of these classes, first of all. Second of all, how are you gonna like put all those three classes together? Like, come on, man. So yeah. Also, my teacher was really racist. He was a white dude that said that we should be grateful we were colonized. So yeah. Yeah.
And these things aren't like 10 years ago. Like, I think Dana, this is only like 3-4 years ago, right?
Yeah, I graduated
That's game.
2017. So
Yeah. Anyone else from our attendees has like had ethnic studies, or has it been like talked about in your school? So I'll just read it since I'm here. So Liliana said that literally all my teachers are white. I am the only indigenous person at my school. These classes seem impossible for me to ever have. Yeah, I felt that. And then Lindsay said, this is a really interesting thought, Ale. Who should be teaching ethnic studies is a great question. So I wonder if schools, when planning ethnic studies, should plan to hire new people rather than asking existing educators to teach a class.
It's interesting you say that because we have a increased teachers of color bill being introduced. Oh, were you just about to say that?
No, you go.
Oh yeah, but I mean, I could just keep your eye out for that. If you see that going around and you're like, hey auntie, can you maybe you don't want your aunt teaching ethics, but I'll pass it back to Johana.
Yeah, I was gonna mention that within the Ethnic Studies Coalition, that was one of the things we talked about. We're like, okay, because we have had ethnic studies and Chicanic studies in some schools, but then the teacher who does that, is usually a white person who doesn't care. Like, I had a friend who went to Roosevelt who said, so we had Chicano studies, but the teacher just put videos every day. So we need someone who cares, and that's why we want someone that's a teacher of color, because they're gonna show it and they're gonna actually have the passion that goes behind it, and they're gonna teach what needs to be taught. And that's something that the coalition is working on, to make sure like the people writing the curriculum are people who know and people that care, because it's not just about you knowing, you need to care, because we're gonna be teaching the future.
Yeah, I just also want to add, they also like experience, like these teachers, we want the teachers who also have experience with like the things that we're facing today, because then it also like just adds on to making more sense, and like these classes being more understandable, like, oh yeah, I've been through that too, so I know what it's like, like more discussion based type of thing.
I think we can move on to the next one.
Liliana said they fought for that bill today with a legislator. So shout out to you.
Yes, This is
I, oh,
Sorry. Okay, so use comments towards ethnic studies. There is a misconception that because students are learning about their culture and identity, that they are not engaging in academically rigorous subjects. And some comments that are arguing are the following. To say that ethnic studies is not academically rigorous implies the idea that learning about ourselves is not real or relevant education. Ethnic studies allow students to become more academically engaged, do better in achievement tests, graduate at higher rates, and develop a sense of empowerment. Students get the opportunity to look within themselves and learn about their culture and identity. As a result, we engage in research, critical thinking, and action to create and imagine the worlds we deserve. And ethnic studies intentionally centers those who have been historically and systematically erased from mainstream curricula due to colonialism, racism, patriarchy, xenophobia, and linguistic imperialism. And some youth comments towards environmental justice. The youth are arguing the following. This moment is not one person or one group. This movement is not one person or one group. This movement is all of us, and we need to make sure we value those who are disproportionately affected by this crisis and allow those who are affected to lead. That was by Isra Hirsi. Another one is, we hear that our generation is going to be the one in charge of dealing with the problems that current leaders have created, and we will not wait passively to become that future. The time is now for us to be leaders. And that was by Bruno Rodriguez. We're here to write a new story, a story in which our country is doing everything in its power to address not only the climate crisis, but the systemic injustices at its roots. A story in which our constitutional right to a safe climate is recognized by the highest courts. That was by Vic Barrett. And for way too long, the politicians and people in power have got away with not doing anything at all to fight the climate crisis and ecological crisis. But we will make sure that they will not get away with it any longer. We will not stop fighting. We will never stop fighting for this planet, for ourselves, our future, and for the futures of our children and grandchildren. And that was by Greta Thunberg.
Okay, so here we're at almost towards the end, so bear with us. These are just some things that you guys could do if you wanted to after kind of listening to everything that we talked about, is that you could educate others, share the knowledge that you know so that others can also acknowledge it, make spaces for sharing and networking, get involved with other organizations doing the same or similar thing, make diversification a priority, include everyone, make them feel welcome to get involved, be aware of own historical background and learn about others, be the change and make a difference with what you know and apply it to your daily life.
yeah, these are just different petitions that you can sign. I'm sure that y'all have like a full spreadsheet of this already, of the different petitions to sign and things like that. If you go to the next slide, it's the specific social media hashtags that we're using for today. And so we'll just keep that up for a second because the next slide is just sources and stuff like that. Are there any questions or other topics that you want to discuss before the time is up?
How can we get these classes in our schools? Like, especially when we have like racist schools to begin with? Like, how do we start that change when people aren't willing to listen to you in the first place?
I'd say definitely the one thing that you need to do, or that you can do, is speak to other people about it. And if you speak to other people about it, whether they like it or not, they're going to have an opinion. And that opinion is going to spark an entire mindset of, oh, ethnic studies. I haven't thought about that before. So yeah, getting the word out is really big, definitely.
And you
But
can,
I'll let
oh, sorry.
Johanna answer that because I know.
Yeah, so, and I mean, that is what UNIDOS is working on, to pass a bill so that all K through 12 schools in Minnesota are required. It's a requirement for graduation that you have to take this class. So if you want to graduate, you got to take an ethnic studies course. So that is like right now happening, and we're already like so close. Like we already are having meetings with legislators. Parts of the bill is passing, so you can join the Youth for Ethnic Studies Coalition. So that is the Instagram. They just like, put in the chat, and you can just like send them a DM and tell them that you want to start joining their meetings. They have them, I feel like every month or 2 times per month. Yeah, we're really close to getting to our goal. It's been about 2-ish years. So we're gonna, I mean, well, me, I'm gonna pay, I don't know about you guys, you know, but that happens really soon. So it's in the works.
That makes me so happy. Thank you guys so much for making this like Zoom call and for all the work that you've done. Like, it's gonna make an unbelievable change in schools like mine, and like I'm just so excited.
Wow, that is awesome. Anyone else have a question or a comment? If you want to get involved, just follow the Instagram and then like DM them you want to start attending their meetings.
Yeah, don't be afraid to slide into our DMs. Just kidding, yeah.
I have a question. So I work with educators mostly, and a lot of educators just like what you said. I mean, the majority of educators in the States are white women. And a lot of the folks that we work with are obviously white, and they just don't know the story. Like the stories that you're sharing are so powerful for me to hear as a white person, and just realizing like I have zero idea what you're going through. And I'm wondering if there's like resources that you typically suggest to get educators to the point, white educators, where they can be an ally in this space. Not necessarily that we want them to teach things, just that they understand how to make this happen, because they tend to have a little bit more power in the education system or in different ways, maybe not more.
Definitely one way. I know that's like a loaded question, so I'll give my people a little minute to think about that. But in my experience as an educator myself and as a student, there were most of the times where I faced discrimination, things like that. When I spoke up about it, people did not listen. They didn't want to listen either, which is really big. If they don't even want to listen, the damage that does to each student saying no, that's nothing happened. No, you're blowing it out of proportion. We start believing it, and it affects our mental health throughout our lives. So even listening, they really need to do like an internal dialogue with themselves over, why don't I understand this? Do I have anyone around me who looks different than I do? And most of the time that answer is no, especially here in Minnesota. I'm from North Carolina, so I think we're over time. But I'm from North Carolina, and that's a different type of racism. It's very upfront. But when we moved up here, the racism was really passive, but passive, what do y'all call it? Minnesota nice. There we go. And that was even a learning curve. Gaslighting times 12, to be honest. But yeah, I'm not sure if that answered the question. Hopefully it did. But
I can add some things too. I think that, I mean, personally, as an educator, here, at least in Minneapolis, there's a lot of resources. You know, Google is a huge resource as well, even though like just like a starter, like, hey, how do I do this? Just like a starter. And then, you know, as well as just like speaking out, like Ale said, just being like, hey, like, is there any other teacher out here or what is it? That is facing this problems, because most of the time you're not alone. Most of the time there's other people that are facing the same issues. Therefore, if you speak and you share your resources, that will help you. But yeah, I would just say Google is I would say the first start of everything. Sadly, since there isn't like a huge like thing where we can find all our resources, but
I think we
dang.
lost her. Okay. I was just gonna add real quick too. I know we've done workshops on this in the past to try to educate people. We just haven't been on top of it because the virus. But if you do want to know a little more, you could also follow Unidos MN, because like we're such a big branch where it's like a tree and then there's different branches of it. And then Unidos MN kind of shares like everything that all the other organizations are doing. So I know they've done things like with climate change, the ethnic studies, which is like what we do. There's a lot, and I know that they do workshops on that. So I could probably just add their thing real, and there'll be more. Oh, Johana added it, and there'll be more info there too.
Oh, Donna, you can keep going.
I accidentally dropped my computer, so I'm on my phone now. I think I messed up my computer because I just got so like, but I forgot what I was saying. So someone else can go while I get situated again.
I think we're kind of at the end of that question. If anyone has something else to say, I think we passed our extra 5 minutes, but I'm not sure. We did.
So we have about 30 seconds left. So I guess I'll invite folks to maybe continue this conversation on the Slack channel, or at the closing that's coming up. I think it's maybe in like 40 minutes. And before we say goodbye, I just want to put a couple links in the chat for you all. Obviously, there's links for the social media challenges, and you want to make sure that you connect with through Twitter or through Instagram with the Youth for Environmental Studies, I think, which they posted their hashtags. And then we also have a survey for everyone to take. We want to hear about what your experience was like today, especially in virtual. It's so hard to understand what everyone went through and what happened for you. So go ahead and fill that out. And I just want to say thanks for all the presenters who came today and presented, and then all the participants who shared their experience as well. For me, it was really great. And so if anyone wants to just unmute themselves and say thanks or anything like that.
Thank you guys for listening. This is our first time like ever presenting to a big group, so we were very nervous.
Oh, you were
did well. You did amazing.
Yeah, thank you guys for listening. We were worried because we realized that you guys have been on here all day, so we're like, oh, we're gonna be like another lecture. But it sounds like we entertained you guys and informed you guys, so that's
A
good.
little laugh here and there.
Yeah.
Good.
Have a good night. Thank you so much.
Thank you guys. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.